News for the First Coast from the WJCT News Team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and on today's First Coast Connect, a stadium deal is reached but not yet unveiled. We talked to Florida Times Union Metro columnist David Bauerlein about what to expect and to watch for in the days and weeks ahead. Then, did a former mayor steal the light to the St. Augustine Lighthouse? We quiz the experts about the oldest city's lesser-known past as the city's History Festival gets underway. Plus, an upcoming dance performance focuses on the strength and power of the female body. And storyteller Paul Strickland explains why the best tales have more to do with listening than speaking. And the best of the week ahead. We get the cultural rundown from our friends at Create Jax. You can join our conversation on air by giving us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at WJCT.org or reach out on Facebook, Instagram, or X. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The New York criminal trial resumes today of former President Donald Trump after a one-day break. Adult film actress Stormy Daniels will return to the stand. She's alleged she and Trump had a sexual encounter years ago and that he paid her for her silence. Trump denies the allegations. NPR's Andrea Bernstein reports.
On Tuesday, Daniels testified in graphic detail about her sexual encounter with Trump at a celebrity golf tournament in 2006, about their continued interactions because, she said, Trump dangled a role in The Celebrity Apprentice, and about the fraught details of the negotiations for her to stay silent right before the 2016 election. Many elements of her testimony lined up with what other witnesses, including former Trump employees, have said. But she's both denied and affirmed she had sex with Trump over the years. In heated exchanges, Trump's lawyer lit into her about how Daniels, who grew up poor, was motivated by money and hatred of Trump. Andrea Bernstein, NPR News, New York.
President Biden is warning he will hold up more weapons to Israel if the Israeli military conducts a major ground invasion of Rafah. The city in southern Gaza is sheltering more than 1 million Palestinians. They're trying to get away from fighting between Israel and Hamas. Biden told CNN civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs.
I made it clear that if they go into Rafah, they haven't gone into Rafah yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem.
The Biden administration has already paused some shipments of thousands of bombs to Israel because of these concerns. Tornado watches are up in northern Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia this morning. 2 people died in Tennessee yesterday after tornadoes blew through. A third person died in North Carolina. Federal forecasters say the El Nino climate pattern is on its way out. It helped drive global temperatures to record levels over the past year, as NPR's Lauren Sommer reports.
2023 was the hottest year since record-keeping began. That was due in part to emissions from burning fossil fuels, but also because of El Nino. It's a natural pattern where the ocean heats up in the eastern Pacific, releasing heat into the atmosphere. Forecasters at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration say El Nino is winding down, setting the stage for a La Nina pattern by the end of the summer. That could influence rainfall patterns around the planet and set the stage for a worse hurricane season in the Atlantic. La Nina typically produces conditions that make it easier for hurricanes to strengthen. Lauren Sommer, NPR News.
Catastrophic flooding in southern Brazil has now killed at least 100 people. Dozens of others are missing. The capital of the southern Brazilian state of Rio Grande do Sul has been cut off by flooding. This is NPR.
It's now 4 minutes after 9. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Michelle Corum. Governor Ron DeSantis has ordered a heightened police presence on state university campuses during graduation ceremonies. Speaking at the University of Florida yesterday, DeSantis pointed to commencement ceremonies at Florida universities going off without interruption amid a wave of recent pro-Palestinian campus protests. Florida Department of Highway Safety Director Dave Kerner says campus police departments have requested the Florida Highway Patrol's assistance on multiple occasions.
Florida's colleges and universities will always remain centers of education and growth, not encampments of radicalization and intimidation.
Pro-Palestinian demonstrations stemming from the war between Israel and Hamas have led to the arrest of dozens of protesters on at least 3 Florida university campuses over the past few weeks. Jackson Short is the new Duval County Public Schools police chief. Short is a veteran law enforcement officer whose career began in 1998 with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, where he's served as the Director of Investigations and Homeland Security and Assistant Chief of the Special Operations Section. Short replaces Greg Burton, who retired last year to recuperate from a stroke. It's up to 80 degrees already in Jacksonville, mid-90s this afternoon, sunny and windy today, 20% chance of rain tonight, 80% chance of rain on Friday.
Support for NPR comes from Ooma, a cloud-based phone service for any size business with an automated virtual receptionist, video meetings, and other features to connect to customers and coworkers anywhere at ooma.com/NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, the city and the Jaguars have reached a stadium deal, but the details remain under wraps. Florida Times Union Metro columnist David Bauerlein tells us what we can expect and what to watch for in the days ahead. Later, as St. Augustine's History Festival gets underway, we explore the city's lesser-known stories, including a captivating huckster who first promised visitors eternal youth. But first, we know a deal has been reached, if not finalized, following months of negotiations over a renovated Jaguars stadium. This agreement was first reported by Florida Times Union Metro columnist David Bauerlein. He joins me now. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Ann.
So you are going to be following this issue a lot in the days and weeks ahead. What should the public be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think there's several things they should pay attention to. One is, what's the deal's cost going to be? The figure's been out there. It's about $1.4 billion to renovate the stadium. Basically, the designs the Jaguars showed last year, a roof, bigger concourse, more escalators, the features that will really renovate and modernize the stadium for NFL standards. The other thing, so that's part of the fan experience thing to look for. And then from the taxpayer standpoint, the big question is, what's the share going to be for the city? What percent of that $1.4 billion is going to come from taxpayers? What percent will come from Shad Khan and the NFL? There's also questions about if the Jaguars were going to ever leave during the term of a 30-year lease. What sort of penalties would there be in the contract that would prevent them from doing it or make them pay a price in terms of making a relocation? So there'd be a non-relocation agreement. There's still a big question about whether the Jaguars would play their home games away in the 2026 and 2027 seasons, or maybe just the 2027 season, because there's going to be massive reconstruction work being done on the stadium in time for it to be open for the 2028 season, if there is a deal finalized by City Council. So those are important things to look for. Mayor Donna Deegan has talked a lot about a community benefit portion of the agreement, which is
what is that?
How much would the Jaguars actually provide over the term of the lease to improve neighborhoods in economically distressed areas? So that'll be an important part of it. So those are some of the highlights that we may be looking for. And then Tuesday is when they're supposed to provide some of that information to the public and City Council.
And so Tuesday, as we're expecting at that council meeting, the announcement, that's what President Ron Salem has said he expects. And he's actually going to be on the program Thursday, hopefully to talk a little bit more in detail about his impressions of the deal. But the public has been, the indication has been that the public will get maybe a couple weeks of meetings to weigh in. Is there any sense that the public has any ability to meaningfully shape the deal, or is the deal kind of what it is and it's what it's going to be?
Yeah, I don't expect that those public meetings are going to materially change the deal. I mean, if there's a cost share in the deal, and whatever that percent is a lot of people showing up at a public meeting saying that's way too much for the taxpayers to pay, going to cause a change in it. I really don't think so. That would not be the way these things usually play out. It's possible if there's just everybody comes up and there's a big backlash to it, maybe they could have that change. I think a lot of the public feedback is going to be really could give a sense of whether taxpayers think that it's outrageous and whether that changes the shape of the deal. I doubt it, but whether it changes whether city council support it, maybe.
How about the design element? I mean, a lot of the focus, and I think my own focus has been kind of on this Millennium Bean looking, superstructure that is the roof. But if you look more closely, in fact, there, kind of the interior is really crosshatched with beams and a lot of kind of structural blockage of the central opening. We talk about how renderings maybe don't quite resemble what, in reality, what they turn out to be. But I wonder if in reality, this one is going to look a little different than we expect, just because we're sort of not focusing on that element, which is a really kind of heavy structural exoskeleton that covers over sort of maybe will dominate more than that outer loop.
Yeah, the outside is like, I love that comparison of the bean, the outdoor statue in Chicago. Yeah, it's kind of got a space age vibe with the metallic reflective material. It's supposed to be first of its kind and all that kind of thing. The inside of it, quite honestly, Ann, I hadn't really fixated on that particular thing you're bringing up in terms of what it's going to look like inside. But that's a good question to look at in terms of what is the actual feel going to be when you're in there. It's going to have a roof that's going to provide some shade because they're basically kind of building the new stadium kind of on top and around a portion of the existing stadium that's going to stay. It's got a lot of structural support. There's some things they have to do to be able to get airflow coming in and out. Whether form pays a price for function in that case, that's a good question. I'll take a closer look at that in terms of what it'll look like. It's supposed to have better views for its fans because it's going to people are going to feel closer to the field in terms of this new layout for the fan experience.
So your organization, my organization, we've all submitted public records requests asking for the term sheet on this deal. We haven't gotten it yet. But as your colleague Nate Monroe pointed out, there's no exemption, public records exemption for, well, we really want to launch this, at a certain time, and therefore we'd prefer not to release that information ahead of time. What is your expectation about actually getting some of that information in your hands to report on prior to Tuesday?
Well, my expectation would be that the city would provide that prior to Tuesday because Nate's exactly right. It's not that the city can't say, well, we haven't finalized this or this I's not dotted or this T's not crossed. It's whatever they have at this time in terms of draft agreements. And so certainly under public records law, the expectation would be that it's not a burden for the city to provide those. They have them. We're not asking them to go into a vault or go through boxes that are buried in some basement. They're documents they have easily at their fingertips. So it seems like public records law and complying with it would be the spirit of transparency to provide what they have as they have it. And if there's still, it's not a complete product, then the responsible thing as reporters is to say this is not the final version, but here's what we have at this point. And that, quite frankly, that should tell us a lot of the information we want to know.
Yeah. In terms of the city's record on negotiating deals and then overseeing the contract as it's written, it hasn't had a great reputation. I mean, there even was a grand jury investigation, in my time in this city when the shipyards deal went south and the city lost $36 million and got, a big goose egg for it. Is there more faith that the city is doing a better job of watchdogging contracts and making sure that things remain within budget and that things are on time and, actually that the city's getting what it's promised?
That seems to be the case on some of the deals the city has done with the Jaguars so far. I mean, they did the Sports Performance Center. That seemed to have worked out pretty well from the city and the Jaguars' perspective. The thing on this deal here is I think the important thing to understand is the city is not starting from square one on this. There are a template that's out there for other NFL agreements with other cities. So the actual parameters of the deal are kind of shaped by what's already been done. So I'm saying it's not fill in the blank at all, but the negotiations are kind of within that framework. So whether that makes people feel better or worse about the city's negotiating, I don't know. But it's not like they're out there kind of completely redrawing or starting from scratch on how to do this deal. The oversight of it and the enforcement of it is, there's that would be a big question in terms of making sure that the city gets what it expects. I mean, obviously there's renderings, are they actually built as portrayed? So there would be some monitoring on that. Usually on these deals, if there's overruns, it's picked up by the Jaguars. That'll be another thing to look for. If there's higher costs, how's that? Who bears that cost? So obviously it's a huge deal. The city's never had so much tax money at stake. They really would need to be able to show that they can make sure that the city taxpayers get what they expect for this massive investment in the stadium.
Well, holding them to account, we know that you're going to be doing that, and we're going to be following very closely your reporting. David Bauerlein from the Florida Times-Union, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Ann.
And up next, the secrets of St. Augustine's lesser-known history. We're going to ask two local historians. You may know the broad outlines of St. Augustine history, the fort, Ponce de Leon, but some of the most fascinating facts often fall through the cracks. And to explore some of these lesser-known stories, we're joined by First Coast News anchor and reporter and unofficial St. Augustine historian, Jessica Clark. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you.
And Roger Smith, outreach manager at the St. Augustine Historical Society and assistant professor of history at Flagler College. Hey, Roger.
Hey, I'm not at the Historical Society anymore.
Oh, no kidding.
No, I'm the park historian at the Fountain of Youth now.
So that's just a piece of history.
Yes.
All right. Well, so the St. Augustine History Festival, annual festival, got underway yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So really no better time than now to explore some of the fun facts from the city's past. Let's start with one of the city's most iconic structures, the lighthouse.
The
Okay.
lighthouse. Well, so I was intrigued to learn that at one point in St. Augustine's history, there were two lighthouses standing at the same time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just for, 2 weeks or anything short period like that. It was years.
Right.
Right?
Right. They began constructing the lighthouse we know in 1871 because it became clear that the old lighthouse was going to fall down. And it was sinking into the sea, the soil was eroding, and the beach was eroding. And so they finished construction in 1874 and then basically just waited for the baby to be born and the lighthouse to fall. And in 1880, it finally fell.
They just waited for it to fall into the sea.
Yeah. And you can still see part of it
Really?
today.
If you go up to the observation deck at low tide, you can still see the Coquina Foundation.
So if I'm standing on the lighthouse and I'm looking east towards the ocean
Mhm.
and the Salt Run, where do I look from that vantage point?
You look toward the water, toward Salt Run, just if you're facing due east, it's just off to your left a little bit, not
Oh,
much.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is accurate, so let's sort this out. But I have been told when I'm standing on the pier by the yacht club, you can even look down into the water and see some of it.
Oh, that might be. I don't know. I haven't tried that.
I don't know if that's just local lore or just what, but it's there, and
Probably
you can
so.
you can certainly see it.
It's interesting that sea level rise was kind of impacting the city even as
Mhm.
far back as 1871.
Well,
Right.
and that whole beach, that 4 miles of beach that's now Anastasia State Park, wasn't there until the 1940s because it used to be Anastasia Island was the barrier island. And then when the Coast Guard took over during World War II, Coast Guard said, we can't be corkscrewing our way out of the harbor to get out to the ocean to chase submarines. So they're the ones who dredged the current entrance that we have now. And so when that sand was dredged, it all wanted to go somewhere, and it formed that island.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so there's an interesting theory. There could be actually shipwrecks underneath the sand there at Anastasia Island.
Oh, wow.
So the history of the lighthouse is varied and deep and multi-layered, but there is this story about a former mayor actually stealing the light from the lighthouse.
Yes.
Tell us about this.
Well, Paul Arnaud, who was the mayor of St. Augustine during the Civil War, he was a Southern sympathizer. And when the Union took over St. Augustine in 1862, he had the lens at our lighthouse and down in Daytona. had the lenses disassembled and were buried.
Buried.
Because he didn't want them to be assisting Union troops as they...
Exactly.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
And how did they recover it?
They threatened him with life imprisonment.
And so I could just see him going out and digging them up himself.
Right.
Now, I don't know if he dug them up himself, did he?
I don't know.
But he dug them up.
He had to point them out to somebody. And I have a special love for the lighthouse. That's where I met my wife.
Oh.
Yeah. So that'll always be near and dear.
Oh, that's wonderful.
I'm glad the light is back in there then.
Yeah.
And
for many reasons.
It's faced other threats. I remember, kind of in the early 90s, there was discussion about, getting the original, is it a Fresnel lens? Yeah, put back in the lighthouse because it had been replaced with a beacon by the Coast Guard at some point. So it wasn't even a lighthouse with the original light for a while.
No, actually, the original light that went in 1874 is still there. In, I want to say 1981, sometime in the early 80s, somebody shot, decided to take target practice at it. And if I remember correctly, they broke 14 panes of the Fresnel lens, and those had to be replaced. But that is the original light that's in there now.
So the light that was replaced, there's the lighthouse, then there's the lightkeeper's house.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which has gone through a few lives itself in terms of having, whether it was going to be preserved, whether it was going to be preserved historically. There was a time when it caught fire.
Yeah, it burned down in the early 80s. And that was when, I'm going to get in trouble. I can't remember the women's group's name that bought the property.
Oh, Junior League.
Junior League. Oh, gosh, forgive me, ladies. They became the conservators and took over the restoration and the maintenance and the rebuilding of the keeper's house. And finally, not that long ago, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, the property was officially presented to them as their property.
So if you're just joining us, we're talking about some of the lesser-known facts from St. Augustine history, and you can join our conversation live on air by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email us at firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. I want to move on now to a really interesting topic that, Jessica, you have been looking into about Diamond Lil.
Oh, yeah, Diamond Lil. Well, so I have learned because of Roger that there are two Diamond Lils. And so I always thought that the Diamond Lil that came to St. Augustine was the original Diamond Lil. But Roger has so kindly taught me that she wanted to be and told others that she was the Diamond Lil of ill repute from the West.
Even went to the trouble of having a diamond stud put in her tooth.
Just like the real, or I should say original, Diamond Lil. So maybe we'll start with the original Diamond Lil, Roger.
Yeah, the original Diamond Lil had she was a madam of a brothel up in the Yukon, I believe in Dawson City. And she eventually, when the gold rush played out, she moved her house down to Seattle, where she died of, STD type of diseases and that kind of a thing.
Yikes.
Our Diamond Lil,
meaning St. Augustine's Diamond Lil.
Luella de McConnell. She came in 1900, and she had basically taken on the persona of telling people her nickname up in the Yukon was Diamond Lil, and she had the diamond stud in her tooth, and it was a very over-the-top type of personality. The original Diamond Lil is who Mae West patterned her stage presence after.
Wow.
Yeah, so all the people in St. Augustine knew is that this lady who was so brash and so outspoken, and she came into town with more money than women were supposed to have in the year 1900, they didn't accept her, and they just didn't like her at all.
Now, she owned the property that is now the Fountain of Youth.
Right.
And she really built on the idea and enhanced the idea that the Fountain of Youth in Ponce de Leon, Juan Ponce de Leon, had stopped there to check out some life-generating water there.
Right.
And so she was the one who really kind of built that story up.
Yeah, I have pictures of just a wooden gazebo type structure with a 5-cent sign from like 1907, where people would especially could come over from the Ponce de Leon Hotel, and they could get a sip of the water for a nickel. They could buy exotic fruit like oranges, and grapefruit. And one of the big things was she had a photographer there who would take people's pictures in front of rose bushes because it was February. And you're not supposed to have rose bushes. What a strange land this is.
Wow. And so she really kind of created the Fountain of Youth, the whole concept of it, which was a major tourist attraction at the time and really continues to be.
And continues to be, and the story still exists.
Yeah,
wink, wink.
We're coming up on 100 years of the Fraser family's ownership of the Fountain of Youth. Walter Fraser bought it from her estate in 1927.
Oh, okay. From Diamond Lil's estate.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, she died in a car accident.
So she ended up having a number of stories that she would tell around town. As you say, she was kind of known to be a little bit brash and inventive.
Good way to put it.
Wow, that was awesome.
But did she create a story about finding a cross there?
Yes.
Well, and that's the thing. It's the Coquina Cross, 15 stones down, 13 across, and it was discovered in 1909. The problem is she didn't do it in the scientifically correct manner. She said that she had found this. One of her workers was digging and doing maintenance work, and he discovered these stones.
Laying in the ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're talking about a cross out of stones in the ground.
Yeah. Same cross you see out there today. And but she claimed she cleaned it all off and said, "Eureka! Look at what I found." And a lot of because the town didn't like her, when she yelled Eureka, they yelled hoax because scientists, archaeologists didn't come out and make the discovery the right way and that kind of a thing. She should have left it alone and let them come in, and then it would have been irrefutable.
So do you think it's real or do you think it's a fake?
No, I don't think it was a fake. What I found, I spent 2.5 years at the Fountain of Youth doing research there. The Frasers hired me to come out, and they were unbelievable. I told them, I said, you may not like what I find. And they said, we're okay with that. We want to know the truth. And what they do have, though, is in 1904, Luella, her workers had found this kind of an ostrich egg size and shaped salt cellar, which is where they used to put salt and keep it, and it had neat engraving on it and things like that. Inside the salt cellar was a vellum parchment. Vellum is finely smoothed animal skin, and they would write on that a lot of times because it would preserve better than paper.
They being
the Spanish.
Okay.
And there is on this vellum, Luella had it translated in 1912, and Walter Fraser had it translated again in 1953. And one was translated here, the other in 1953 took place in Philadelphia, and the two translations were one word apart. And the vellum, basically, I don't have it memorized because it's in very archaic Spanish and the way they phrase things, but basically said, this is where Ponce de Leon was. And the funny thing is we don't know where the salt cellar is. That's been lost over the years. But in a glass frame about this big, there's about a foot, in length and about 4 inches across. The Frasers have the actual vellum.
Oh wow!
And they sent it off to the University of Arizona at Tucson and had it investigated, and everything fits as far as the age of the vellum, the writing style, everything about it. The only thing that they could do to prove it even more was they could actually test the age of the lead in the ink, but they would have had to burn about 25% of it.
Oh my goodness!
And
that's
their smoking gun as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I want to shift gears because you made a really important historic discovery yourself, Roger, recently. We think of the name George Washington having a lot to do with the founding of our country, but we don't usually think of it as having much to do with St. Augustine. So, Jessica, you covered this.
Right. Well, Roger is so great because he'll just be talking and then he'll drop this gold golden egg on you, and you're going, what? So one day, just talking with him, he said, "Oh yeah, and in George Washington's letter about St. Augustine." I said, "What?" So this is 1775, right,
December
Roger?
18th.
And it involves this confiscation of some letters, and George Washington, of course, in the on the Revolution side, he finds out about this confiscation of letters, and so then he decides to take action. And Roger, I'm going to let you do the rest.
Okay. There's a letter in the Library of Congress, and Washington is writing to John Hancock, who is the president of the Continental Congress, and letting them know that the day before, on December 17th of 1775, they had confiscated a packet of letters that were destined for the governors in the Floridas and in the Caribbean. And in the letters, they discovered that the British were stockpiling quoting Washington, arms and munitions in the castle and barracks in Augustine, and proceeds to ask Congress for an army to invade East Florida and capture St. Augustine.
And of course, the castle would be
Yes,
the fort.
the fort.
The fort in downtown St. Augustine,
Yeah,
the Castillo de
and-
San Marcos.
And
which was pro-British and therefore his enemy.
All of Florida was British at the time. It was a British colony, right?
Right.
And of course, not on the side of George Washington.
Right. And what first intrigued me about the letters, not only that Washington is concerned about St. Augustine, but that Congress is concerned as well. And this was the first of 81 letters that I've found so far where Washington cites St. Augustine either as a military target or a military concern.
It's amazing. Great history. I know that people can find out more information about the St. Augustine Annual History Festival online. Roger Smith, Jessica Clark, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, this is great.
Up next, an upcoming dance performance focuses on the strength and power of the female body. Welcome back. For more than a decade, Jacksonville Dance Theater has focused on bringing professional dance to both the local and national stage. To talk about their current project, I'm joined by soloist and performer Jessica Plonka. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Jacksonville Dance Company manager Winter Bosanko. Welcome, Winter.
Hi.
So the current project is called In Bloom. What is the animating idea behind that theme?
In Bloom is about, we like to say some years are for growing, and this year was for blooming. We've spent, this is our 12th season. We have spent a lot of time really grounding ourselves in Jacksonville, the city, and the community. And this is our 12th season, so we really felt like we wanted to bring like a flourishment to what we've been doing. I would say it's one of our best shows yet. Our dancers are so strong. The choreography is compelling. And yeah, so the blooming, the growing is really happening here.
Yeah. And Jessica, you are a performer in Bloom. This group really focuses on women and kind of inclusivity. What does it mean to be a part of that group, and how do you present In Bloom in that fashion?
Well, it's really special for me to be a part of In Bloom and a part of Jacksonville Dance Theater because I grew up here in Jacksonville. And so just to be able to be a part of a company in my hometown just sort of speaks volumes to me about the arts community in Jacksonville. And to get to work with this amazing group of women is really special. We all get to add our own voices in a way to how we perform or how we approach our choreography. And then we also get to sort of meet in the middle with what the pieces are about and find ways to tell our own stories within the stories that we're showing on stage.
And so do you describe this as modern dance, the kind of dance that you do?
Yes, it's contemporary modern, although we do get different varieties of those styles depending on the choreographers that we're working with.
And the choreographer on this one is Thought I had her name at my fingertips, but I guess I don't. Is it Rachel?
We have a few
Okay.
choreographers. Our artistic director, Rebecca Levy, she is premiering a new work called Get to the Point.
Okay.
It's really lovely. It's a lot of fun. I think the audience is going to enjoy that one. But we also have work by Kristen Sullivan, who is a local, and then Ebene Amos. We often commission choreographers. She is a artist out of Tennessee.
Oh.
Am I missing anyone?
Bliss Kohlmeyer for Labyrinth. We've had that one, and we've been adding to it, and that's also really fun and very physical work.
And so some of the work that you do is really serious. Some of it's humorous. How do you work that into dance?
That is a great point because Get to the Point actually has a very humorous section. Jess is in it. It makes me giggle. I think the great thing about modern dance is that we pull from a lot of different expressions or emotions, and we are often a little more serious. So it is fun to see something maybe a little more lighthearted or open to interpretation. But hopefully we get some laughs. I think people feel uncomfortable sometimes giggling in a dance performance, but you are welcome.
It's usually very serious.
It is, but there's a few moments in there of levity. Like you can feel free to whatever you're feeling, express it.
So why is focusing on diversity and inclusivity important to the kind of mission of the theater group or of the dance group?
We live in a very diverse city. Our community is very diverse. So it's important to us that we are showing diverse bodies on stage. And that's important because we're not just one thing. We're not, like Jess said, we're doing varied styles of modern dance. And we're not just doing, we don't want to just showcase a certain body type or a certain person. So it's really important for us to reflect the community, which is, you look around Jacksonville, there's so many different people and ways of life. And we like to reflect that in modern dance. It's not always easy, but we try our best to really reach out and portray a lot of different stories and bodies.
And you do, in addition to dancing, I mean, the group itself does a lot of outreach into the community. Do you participate in that as a dancer, Jessica, or is that more the troupe itself?
Yes, we do. A lot of the company dancers do participate in the outreach. We actually just got done doing a Arts for All project with the Cummer Museum where we got to dance with the kids there. And that was really special because we just got to share movement and sort of talking about the diversity of Jacksonville. There's so many different ways to reach out to people, and movement is one of those sort of communal ways where everyone can move in their own way. And then the company also does beer and ballet throughout different times of the month, and that is taught by a couple different company members as well. So the company does participate in that outreach in different ways.
Well, In Bloom is on May 11th at the Florida Theater, and people can get tickets at the Florida Theater website or at the JacksonvilleDanceTheater.org website. Jessica Planca, Winter Bosanka, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And storyteller Paul Strickland comes up next, explaining why the best tales have more to do with listening than speaking. I'm joined now by someone who's made his career of sharing stories, crafting fiction, and even, he says, just telling lies. Paul Strickland is an award-winning professional storyteller who performs all around the country, but he will be here on Amelia Island this Sunday, Mother's Day. Paul, this is not the first time that you've performed at Story and Song Bookstore. What brings you back?
Oh, I had such a fantastic time this past February, it was, at their inaugural, I guess you can't say first annual, their inaugural storytelling festival. I was there with Michael Reno Harrell and Kim Whitecamp and Carl Hyacin as well. And it was just a really, really beautifully produced festival with a community that came out to just support the whole event in such an exciting way that whenever I saw my schedule and I was heading back down through, I just reached out and called them, and it's worked out beautifully to do another show there on Mother's Day.
They're a really neat facility up there.
It's great. It's a great space. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what is more important, Paul? Is it to have a good story or to be a good storyteller?
Yeah, I think It depends on the circumstance, really, but they're both important, you know? Being able to craft a good story and being able to tell a story well is extremely important to make sure that a story is durable for any kind of situation. So being able to sort of evolve and adapt a story for the situation, because the game is to make sure that the story reaches the listener no matter what. So being a great storyteller, attempting to continue to be a better craftsperson of story is about that ability to communicate. But let's be real, having a great story is a heck of a start, right?
Yeah. And you teach storytelling, the craft of storytelling. So how do you begin with people that are new to this and they want to tell their story?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that's everyone can do it immediately to some degree. And there is a great deal of the art of storytelling that is just learning how to get out of your own way, learning how to identify the things that you do naturally that are already compelling to people when you're sitting around a dinner table and you're telling a story about what happened to you at work today, and that story really connects to both your partner but also both of your children, and everyone is having an experience right there with a story that they did not have before you told it. Whatever that thing is what I try to identify in people and help them sort of build and strengthen and be able to access on command, so that whenever they are in front of an audience, they have access to those natural gifts.
And so how did you begin storytelling? Did you start young? Like, were you the kind of person that liked to tell stories at the dinner table, or is this something that you developed as you grew older?
It was something that, I mean, it kind of came about sort of, I guess, organically. I was touring around as a musician, and I was actually on the stand-up comedy club circuit for a while. But what I was finding as I was on stage was that, if I was playing songs, I would want to spend a lot of time in between the songs telling some stories about the song. Or if I was telling jokes, I would often find myself sort of going off on some tangents that were not as funny, because what I wanted to do was sort of find a way to connect with the audience. And the shortest distance between those 2 points was narrative. So I just started crafting stories, and instead of crafting songs or jokes, I started crafting stories. And now what I do is sort of a hybrid of those three things, but storytelling is, the primary tool.
And so, as you say, I mean, you play guitar. You also, have a very comedic aspect to your performance. So, this Sunday, what can people expect? Like, what does the performance that you're planning look like? Or does that depend on kind of when you get there, getting some read from the crowd?
It does depend a lot on that. I mean, but I will say that I am planning on, it is a Mother's Day performance, so there will be at least 35 to 40 minutes of material that is based on mothers. Um, some of the material that I'm best known for probably are stories that I collect from my Aunt True and my Uncle False. And they are, I say often that they are tall tales, but they're also alternative tales. And those stories, there'll be a couple of new ones of those that I'll definitely be doing at Story and Song. But what I'll be focusing on, at least for the first set, is I've got a set of stories, and I'm going to do two or three of them, depending on the audience, that are sort of alternative Mother's Day stories that sort of really talk about the relationship and the role and the influence that a mother can have in your life. One of those stories is a story that's entirely a made up story by myself, like I wrote the entire piece. One of those stories is actually a retelling of a very old fairy tale that you would be able to find in your dusty old copy of Grimm's on your shelf, on your Grimm's Fairy Tales book. But it's, what I like to call is a reupholstered folk tale is what I do with these old stories. I'll take them apart, put them back together, and then reupholster them a tad. So they don't feel like oldie-timey stories. They feel like stories with old wisdom told right now.
So you've won a bunch of awards, including at the Orlando Fringe Festival. Is it gratifying to have that kind of recognition?
Of course, yeah, it is. I mean, in the arts world, awards are somewhat silly, right? I mean, there is a subjectivity to it inherently. But I will say, just like anything, I mean, having another line item on your resume ain't a bad thing. And being able to, yeah, to have won Best Solo Comedy and Best Show at Orlando Fringe consecutive years, and very recently to have been, I was a featured teller at the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee, and then right after Orlando Fringe this year, I'll be heading back to the International Storytelling Center as a teller in residence for a week-long residency where I'll be telling 5 different hours of stories over 5 days. So yeah, I mean, it's opened doors for me, is really what it's done. I would assume actually that Story and Song found me primarily because of the booking that I got through the National Storytelling Festival.
And so when you go to events like that, are you there to tell your stories? Are you listening to other storytellers? Are you learning things from other people, watching their performances?
Oh, at a storytelling festival like that, absolutely. A whole lot of it's about listening. I mean, you can't be a good storyteller if you are not a good listener. It is part of the craft, is learning how to hear others and thereby learning how to hear yourself. If you don't have the ability to hear what you're saying and assess it honestly, then you can't improve as a storyteller. And so being able to hear and actively listen to other people is an integral part of the craft. Yeah.
Well, Paul Strickland, you're in town Sunday, May 12th at Story and Song Bookstore in Amelia Island. I believe the event's at 3 o'clock, and tickets.
That's right.
Tickets are $25. We're excited to have you come to town. What are you looking forward to?
Oh, I'm so excited just to be back and to get to hang out with a few people that I met while I was there at the festival. And I'm just always looking forward to an opportunity to tell a couple of new stories. I've got a couple of new things that I'll be pulling out for that show as well on the second half of the program, and to just connect with folks. I mean, I have a very blessed life that I get to travel around and play songs, and tell stories to people, and connect with them. And then usually after the show, we all sit around and we find a way to sort of more informally share some stories with each other. So it's going to be a really good time.
Well, thanks for connecting with us today. We appreciate it. Paul Strickland, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we'll be right back.
Congaree and Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com. Amelia Island celebrates Wild Amelia Nature Festival on May 18th at Main Beach Park. Experience eco-tours and exhibits, live animals, kids activities, food trucks, live music, and more. More info at ameliaisland.com/wildamelia.
Join WJCT and PNC Grow Up Great for Be My Neighbor Day at WJCT Studios on Saturday, May 11th. At this free festival, meet Daniel Tiger and friends, visit community helpers, sing and dance with Mr. Joe, create arts and crafts, and much more. Learn all about being a caring neighbor by reserving your spot today at wjct.org/events.
On the next Fresh Air, what does it take to have a political conversation today that feels like a productive exchange of ideas? And how can we keep conversations from devolving into a shouting match? Jen Psaki, former White House press secretary, is now writing about exactly that. Next time on 1A, we talk to her about truth, credibility, and the art of talking politics.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Carl was like, let's go.
He's like, Mom, like, let's get going.
What are we doing? Well, I am excited to be here today with you guys every Thursday on behalf of Create Jax. As you guys know, my best friend, Tony Smiligage, is the owner of Create Jax. And every Thursday, he puts out a list of all the events that are happening around the 904. All right, so check it out on his website, CRE8jax.com, to see the full list or follow him on his social media pages. But let's talk about tomorrow, Friday.
What is happening?
I am excited about this. This is a free 2-day event. It's called Jax Ready Fest 2024 at the Prime Osborne.
And to be fair, this is like we're into hurricane season, right? And so people are rightfully, I guess, starting to look at how to get ready for.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you know, the waters did not cool down this winter, so they are predicting that our hurricane season could be a little bit crazy this year. So it's just good to be prepared ahead of time, right? So they're it's gonna start this Friday, tomorrow Friday at 10 a.m. and Saturday. All right, there's gonna be over 60 vendors that have joined the forces with the city. They'll be covering topics such as emergency 911 calls, severe weather, preparedness, and water safety. Attendees will receive free items to add to their emergency supply kits. There'll also be raffles and prizes, including a generator, because you know generators are expensive.
Yes.
Ooh,
I thought was interesting. This isn't just like storm related, though. There's actually they're going to teach people how to administer Narcan, which is actually sadly kind of a needed skill in a lot of places.
And most importantly, learn how to do CPR. Yeah. I personally don't know how to do CPR. What? I want to learn how to do CPR on my dog Mambo. I think about that all the time, so I need to learn how to do CPR.
He doesn't need any reviving. He's good.
But they're going to be teaching that. Guests will also be have the ability to do free health care screening. Like I said, they're going to learn how to do CPR, learn to what you just said, learn to administer Narcan.
Narcan. And this is all at the Prime Osborne?
All for free. Gratis. Free Friday and Saturday starting at 10 a.m. at the Prime Osborne. So make sure you come out, bring your kids, because it's never too early to teach your kids about safety.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. Now, did you know that we have a wildflower field here in Florida?
I did not.
Mm-hmm. Well, now you know. This event is outside of Jacksonville, though. It's in the Gainesville area, about an hour
Alachua County.
About an hour and a half drive. It's worth the views, mi gente. That's going to be this Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon. The Florida Wildflower Foundation is hosting a wildflower farm field day. That's a great day for take pictures with your kids.
Yeah, and it's also going to teach you how to make your own little wildflower farm, so you can be your own little cultivator.
You know, we need that for our bees. Yeah. Our bees need love. So let's go ahead and plant as many wildflowers. And we're not talking about myself. We're literally talking about a wildflower field, okay? All right, so check that out. Also, one of my favorite, Cork Art District. They have their spring pop-up. This is the first time that they're doing this.
With Yellow House.
Yes, I'm really excited. That's this Saturday, May 11th from noon to 6 p.m. And like you just said, they're collaborating with Yellow House, with Hope. Shout out to Hope and everything that she does for our community. They have a unique selection of original artwork and prints by Cork artists, all priced and ready for purchase. Over 30 artists, including Aaron Kendrick, Jamie Emanuele, Karen Kuraki. Oh, Grace, I tried.
Madeline
Stacy,
Peck?
I tried.
Yeah.
Madeline Peck, Marcus William, Overstreet, Ducasse, and Hope McBath, and many more. So check that out at Cork Art Studios. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, and if anybody out there who has not been to Cork, it's just, you got to check it out.
This is the time. When people go to my apartment, they love my apartment because of all the unique stuff that I have. It's because of all these artists. I go to these unique openings, pop-ups, and those are one of opportunities that you could get one-of-a-kind pieces and meet the artist and get it signed. So check that out. Let's talk about the Spring Artist and Makers Market at the Phoenix Art District. That's also this Saturday from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at one of my favorites. Phoenix Art Innovation District is hosting a Springs Makers Market. All right, so check that out this Saturday. And to see the full list of everything, again, go to createjax.com and follow me on my Instagram, Yaya Love Jax.
Love Yaya. Also, I got to plug Be My Neighbor Day at WJCT. That's this weekend,
my God,
too.
yes.
It's Saturday from 10 to 2, and I'll be here. So so will the whole cast of characters. So we invite you to come out. Thank you, Yaya, so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
And that's our program. If you join us tomorrow, we're going to have our Week in Review panel. We're going to be talking about all the week's headlines with our panel of journalists. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.
The TPO. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjax.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels,